What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we are going over the head coaching candidates. I have broken them up in different type of tiers, and we're going to talk about the head coach vacancies across college football. Now, if you guys want on solely my Penn State episode when that firing happened, you guys could scroll down below. I have a whole episode of who I think would be the best coach for Penn State. It was a long time ago. Now we got four main head coach vacancies in college football. I'm going to break down each tier of head coaches, who I really like, who I don't like, and who teams should be not sleeping on necessarily and go after. Let's get into all of it. Now, we talked about Penn State, James Franklin, time and time again. I would have never expect James Franklin to get fired in the beginning of the year. I think James Franklin could still be in the role for a head coaching job, especially with all these openings. But again, with what he did the last two games before he got fired was inexcusable, blowing two 20-plus point spreads. He had to go. We already talked about that. I feel like for Florida, the writing was on the wall for Billy Napier. I mean, they have been disaster the last couple of years. When you look at LSU and that firing, I feel like Brian Kelly was never a fit in that program at all. When you look at the Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors team, that team just had no defense at all. And then going into the next year with Garrett Nussmeier and Mason Taylor in them, another team that didn't really have much of a defense, fell short of a 12-team college football playoff spot. Then you look at this year, I feel like they stacked their chips fully. When you look at Garrett Nussmeier, the amount of track star wide receivers he had in that offense, Caleb Durham, the defense was finally there. But again, the last 2 weeks for them weren't good. It was the right time for him to get fired. And again, Garrett Nussmeier was going through injuries as well as other players on that team with weeks throughout the majority of this season. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier was playing through it. But again, the amount of talent Brian Kelly had this year and how he pushed his deck to the table, it was just time for him to go after those two losses in a row. And again, him with upper management, they never really were on the same page. It was never really a fit. And that's the biggest thing for coaching now in college football necessarily is the fit. He was never a fit there. Again, I do expect him to coach again in college football. Then we have Arkansas as well, which I feel like is a pretty good SEC job. And we also have other openings as well. You got Oklahoma State, you got UCLA, you got Stanford. Those are some back-end jobs, though. We're going to talk about which candidates do I believe people should really go for it. I'm going to break them up in a group of tiers. Now, I have the ultra experienced big swing tier. Then I have the hot coaches right now tier. I have young up and coming coordinators, which I really think people should take a look at. And then we also just have another like miscellaneous tier as well. So now for the big swing tier, we have Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Lane Kiffin, and Marcus Freeman. I don't even know where to start. I mean, we'll start with Nick Saban. If anybody to get Nick Saban to come out of media, home run, obviously. Not only is he the greatest college coach of all time, but I feel like naturally players will gravitate to coming to that program as well. He has that gravitational pull that will just bring players to want to be coached by Nick Saban. I know with NIL and transfer portal isn't guaranteed that all the best players will go to Nick Saban. Again, they're going to go where the money's at, a lot of them, and where better opportunity is for them to start. But Nick Saban will definitely bring along a lot of five stars with him just because people want to play for him. And he's the greatest coach of all time. Again, it's going to take a lot of money to get him out of these boots, but I think it's definitely worth a shot of taking. Like, make a call, see what happens. Again, do I expect Nick Saban to coach a college football again? No. I feel like he got out at the right time when college football was changing because, again, like I said, all these players weren't automatically going to Alabama, and there's a lot more you have to do now to get a player to come to your program with the new age of college football. But if you get Nick Saban, absolute home run for these big programs, make the call. Then you have Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, for me, I feel like is an overrated candidate. Listen, there's no doubt Urban Meyer is one of the best college coaches of all time. It's been a while since he coached college football. You're going to have to offer him a bag to come to your program. And I'm not sure if it's necessarily worth it. In the new age of college football, will he be the same coach necessarily, the same style recruiter? I'm not sure. Yes, he's in tune with all the rules and everything when it comes to acquiring these players, but he's never coached in this new age of college football. Like, again, at least for Saban, not only does he have the gravitational pull, he left right when this started getting hot. Urban Meyer left a long time ago. I think you have to pay him a lot. I think there's better value than Urban Meyer right now. Again, even though you know everything Urban Meyer brings as a college coach, and there's no doubt to his greatness, again, it's just a new age of college football. I think you might be overpaying for a guy that hasn't coached in this new age. Then you go with Lane Kiffin, Marcus Freeman. Now, for me personally, I feel like teams are going to take big swings at these coaches. It's LSU. We've seen Lane Kiffin be the favorite for that job. Penn State, we see Marcus Freeman be the favorite for that job. If you could get these coaches, absolute home run because you get the best of both worlds. You get coaches that have coached in this era, know everything with NIL, transfer portal, flipping rosters, everything. They're great coaches right now as well when you talk about ins and outs, X's and O's. So these two coaches would be absolute home runs. Now, for me personally, the only reason why if I'm Lane Kiffin and I'm Marcus Freeman, if I would second guess myself moving on from these programs, one for Marcus Freeman again, they would have to really outbid you because you have all the resources at Notre Dame. You're in an independent conference where you have a straight shot every year to the college football playoff. And I feel like with that, you have major job security. Again, if you could get a lot more from a Penn State or something, wouldn't fault him going for it. Wouldn't fault anybody going where the money's going, especially when these big programs are equal, if not better opportunities. So, but Marcus Freeman, again, job security at Notre Dame and everything you have there, how beloved you are there, I would think about it. Same type of thing with Lane Kiffin as well. And my biggest issue with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, when you compare them to LSU to Penn State, a lot of people feel like Ole Miss does not have a chance every year to go to the national championship, to win a national championship. But I feel like what Lane Kiffin's done at Ole Miss in the SEC, how he's been able to recruit, how well of a job he's done there, I feel like it is possible for Ole Miss to win a national championship within the next 5 years. I am in complete disagreement with that. And again, very similar to Marcus Freeman, just think about your job security. You are beloved at Ole Miss. You go somewhere else, you don't do a good enough job there in 2 to 3 years, you could be gone. Where Ole Miss, you have way more job security. That's what I would think about personally. But again, Lane Kiffin, Marcus Freeman, I feel like are absolute home runs because, like I said, they coach in this era. They are one of the best coaches in this era. Like, again, if you could get them to flip, would be a great move. Now we're going to talk about hot coaches. Now, for me personally, I think this tier is extremely overrated. One, you're going to have to do better than their current contract. And two, you got to look at the body of work from some of these coaches, not just them coming off a hot year. Now, Eli Drinkwitz out of Missouri, I feel like he is one of the most overrated coaches in this tier. I feel like 2 years ago back when they had Brady Cook, when they had Luther Burden, I feel like they had better expectations going into the year. I know they dealt with a lot of injuries on that roster last year, but I feel like they could have done better last year. They had higher expectations. This year in Missouri, they did well. I feel like they kind of got classed by Alabama. I mean, Alabama is a national championship contender, but they never really proved themselves to be at the top of the SEC with him. And again, to buy out your current coach's contract. And that's the biggest thing like I wanted to get into with these major $50+ million buyouts. You got to make sure the coach you're getting is better than the one you had for sure. And it's not as easy buying a coach out now with NIL. Now that you have to pay players, it's not just coaches you were playing. It's not as easy as it used to be. Again, I feel like Eli Drinkwitz, I don't really like him as a candidate. Like, he hasn't really proven anything that he can get Missouri to the top of the SEC. I know for a lot of people in this tier, you're thinking like, hey, they did a good job with this program. Now we give them more resources with our program. They go even higher. But I feel like he's just a hot name right now. I feel like his body of work isn't crazy impressive to me. Then we got Jeff Brom out of Louisville. I like Jeff Brom. I think out of every coach in this tier, I feel like he's definitely one I would rank pretty high. I feel like as a recruiter in the transfer portal, he has done pretty well. He got Tyler Shaw there. He got Miller Moss there this year. Each year they have been pretty good in the ACC. Again, I like his recruiting and in the transfer portal, how he adapted to the new age. I wouldn't mind him being a coach for one of these programs at all. I feel like he's one in this tier that I kind of like a lot. Then you got Brent Key. Brent Key is a guy, again, where you see him push the chips to this year. You see his team have one of the most experienced teams in college football. He's done a great job with Georgia Tech. Don't get me wrong. I like him in this tier as well. I just get nervous with him because, again, he pushed the chips to this year, and it has really worked for him. But if you look at him next year, what would he do with Georgia Tech with all that turnover? I'm not necessarily sure. He's done a great job with them right now, building that program. I wouldn't mind him being a head coach at a major program. Clark Key, kind of the same type of tier for me as Brent Key. When you look at Clark Key, again, another guy with Diego Pavia, Eli Stowers, that team has a ton of experience. He pushed the chips. When you look at last year, him making noise, and then this year again, they've been one of the best teams in the SEC. I wouldn't mind them getting one of these bigger jobs with more resources. But again, I feel like Vanderbilt, even if he moves on with Vanderbilt, I feel like they're a team that has a lot of noise and will do a lot better in recruiting new players as well with the noise they've been making the last 2 years. And then John Summerall, again, a very high candidate right now in college football, but I'm not necessarily sure if I would hire him. When you look at him with a group of 6 team, he rebuilt Troy, he rebuilt Tulane. He has a great record in college football. He dominated the Sun Belt for a couple of years, but again, I feel like you're taking a huge chance for him right now going to one of these Power 5 powerhouses. I'm not necessarily sure if I would do it. I don't know if that's a better coach or a better fit. I would stay away from him. Now, what I really wanted to get into in this episode is the hot young coordinators. I feel like college football right now is making a big mistake, and same thing with I mean, not necessarily Vegas, but just college football in general is making a big mistake. I feel like even more than coaching X and O's necessarily, I feel like you want the best recruiter for your team. I feel like bringing players in, 25, 30 players, turning over a roster year to year. When you have talent, the talent wins out. Yes, you need a really good coach to win a national championship, but talent matters more. Recruiting matters more, in my opinion. You look at Ohio State last year. People wanted to come for Ryan Day's job, but he got more talent than anybody to that program. And what happens? They win a national championship. So again, I feel like these young guys are way more in tune with NIL, with transfer portal. And I feel like Brian Hartline, Will Stein might be the 2 best candidates on this list. When you look at value, you're not going to have to outbid anybody because they're not a head coach right now. So I feel like them taking the next step up. Yes, you're taking that risk. You have never seen them as a head coach in college football. But for a guy like Brian Hartline, the best wide receivers coach in the entire country, when we look at his resume, what he's done with those receivers, and don't get me wrong, yes, he's had 5-star talent at Ohio State, but it's very hard managing all those egos in the same room. Not only that, he is the best recruiter for Ohio State as well. I feel like he's more than ready to take the next jump as a head coach. He's probably, again, when you look at recruiters on this list, the top of the list, which matters more than even coaching. Getting the players there is what it's all about in college football right now. And again, you could get him for way more value than you would get these hot coaches out, in my opinion. I think he's a better candidate. And same thing with Will Stein as well. Will Stein, what he's been able to do with the quarterbacks in Oregon the last 3 years, getting them to the NFL. He's a great recruiter as well. He's young, in-depth, knows everything with NIL, transfer portal. I feel like this young tier is where college football should be going towards, and they're making a huge mistake going for these guys where maybe their better years have been behind them. And you're getting a ton of value when you're promoting a coordinator to a head coach rather than having to outbid a head coach already at their program. This is the tier where people should be going, and I feel like they're not going towards that this year. These 2 guys deserve head coaching jobs. Again, you get better value for them, and they're probably better recruiters than most people on this list as well, as they have proven. This is where the tier of people in these big programs should be going. But again, they're going to take these big swings. They're going to go for these hot coaches right now, and I feel like some of these big 4 programs can necessarily make a mistake on that. Then you have these 2 other miscellaneous coaches, and I feel the opposite way about each of them. First off, we're going to go with Joe Brady. Joe Brady is a guy that's pretty high in odds. I'm not necessarily a fan of him. I mean, he did a great job at LSU, but who wouldn't? And he was a coordinator at LSU. Now he's been in the NFL with the Panthers. He really proved to me nothing. Now he's done, I guess, a great job with the Buffalo Bills. But again, who wouldn't with Josh Allen? Again, it's been a long time since he's been in college football. He hasn't really proven to me of anything that he could really uplift talent, in my opinion. So I would stay away from Joe Brady. And then John Gruden. I absolutely love John Gruden. Now, you guys may say, again, He hasn't coached college football in a while. He hasn't been a head coach in college football in a while. And then, like, you look at him with the NFL, it's been a while since he's been a head coach there. But when you look at recruiting and his personality, I think John Gruden would bring a ton of players to his program. I feel like what he's done in social media over the last year, I feel like a lot of players would want to play with him. I feel like his personality, even right now at this point, is more attaching to young adults than it is for grown men. I feel like John Gruden would do a great job recruiting, and there's no doubt with his resume that he knows the game of football. I don't think he would cost as much as some of these ultra experienced coaches right now in college football, some of these big swing coaches. I think John Gruden is made for the SEC. I'm a believer in him. I hope he gets a job, even if it's just Arkansas. I hope he gets a job. That wraps up breaking down these tiers for these head coaches and for these candidates. Drop down below who you would like to see as a head coach at a big program. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and